Let's be brutally honest for a second. We live in a world where your presence is often taken for granted until it's gone. You give, you pour, you stay, and you show up every single day. But what happens when you decide to stop showing up? What happens when you reclaim your power, your energy, your self-respect, and you walk away not out of spite, but out of self-love? When you're always present, when you're constantly available, and when your energy is always orbiting around someone, it becomes background noise. It's not that your presence lacks value, it's that familiarity can breed complacency. Humans adapt, we get used to what's always there, and in relationships, this adaptation can turn something precious into something expected. That's where the imbalance begins. You show up with love, with time, with attention, and it gets received like it's endless, like it's guaranteed. But the moment you leave, the moment you take your energy, your presence, your effort, and redirect it back to yourself, everything changes. Suddenly, the silence you leave behind becomes a message, a loud one, because presence is powerful, but absence can be louder. Think about it. We don't realize how much light a candle gives until it's snuffed out. We don't notice how warm someone made a room until they're no longer sitting in it. That's exactly what happens when you stop showing up for someone who got too comfortable. Your absence becomes an echo that bounces off the walls of their own emotional silence. And now, where once there was convenience and confidence, there's a void. That void speaks. It speaks louder than the conversations you begged to have. It speaks louder than the affection you once gave freely. And it speaks in a language that demands attention. Not because you asked for it, but because it feels different now. It feels empty without you. Presence is often taken for granted, especially when it's constant. It's like breathing, so automatic that it's never noticed until it's restricted. But the moment you leave, even quietly, there's a shift. You're no longer just the person who texts first, plans things, checks in, or tries to fix what's broken. You're no longer the emotional caretaker. You're not offering your energy on a silver platter anymore, and that withdrawal creates contrast. It forces the other person to finally see what they had. Absence doesn't mean you're playing games. It doesn't mean you're trying to manipulate. It means you're respecting your energy enough not to waste it where it's undervalued, and the truth is that kind of absence stings in a way words never could. When you were around all the time, he didn't have to look for you. You were there, emotionally, physically, spiritually. But now that you've stepped away, now that you're unavailable, not out of punishment but out of self-respect, he begins to search. He begins to remember. He begins to notice, because your silence, your absence, your stillness, it's not empty, it's powerful. It creates space for realization. It creates space for longing. And that's when everything begins to shift. Not because you demanded it, but because you removed the one thing that had always been taken for granted. People only value what they fear losing. That's not cynicism, it's human psychology. When something or someone is always within reach, the mind labels it as secure, permanent, reliable. There's no urgency, no real gratitude, because the presence feels endless. But the moment that certainty is disturbed, the moment you take a step back, a jolt of realization kicks in. Suddenly, the brain starts reevaluating what it thought would always be there. That's when value shows up, not because it didn't exist before, but because the fear of loss finally revealed it. It's easy to be overlooked when you're constantly accessible. If you're always texting first, showing up no matter what, forgiving without hesitation, and accommodating someone else's inconsistency, your value can become invisible, not because you're not worthy, but because the other person has never experienced the risk of losing you. That's the trigger. It's in the moment of absence, of emotional detachment, that people begin to grasp what they had. That's when they start remembering the comfort, the support, the little things you did. And often it's too late, but whether or not it's too late isn't your concern. Your focus now is understanding your worth is not in your presence, but in how boldly you're willing to walk away when your worth is not honored. Let's be real, people don't change unless they have a reason to. If you're always available, they don't have to show up differently. They don't have to grow, reflect, or change because the supply of your affection seems endless. But the second you remove yourself, you disrupt that pattern. You shift the dynamic. That fear of loss, that panic of absence, is often the only thing strong enough to force someone to look inward and ask, "What did I do?" Or even more powerfully, what did I lose? Fear is a motivator. It's not always healthy, but it's real. It drives attention, reaction, and desire, and in relationships, it exposes truth. When someone truly cares about you, the idea of losing you shakes them. It makes them rethink everything. And if they didn't care, your leaving won't matter, and that's a gift too, because either way, your withdrawal gives you clarity, so when you step back, when you stop showing up, when you finally let go of needing to be seen, that's when you're seen. And not as someone chasing love, but as someone embodying it within. Your value rises in the silence you leave behind. And if that silence makes someone uncomfortable, if it makes them miss you, it means they felt your absence more than they ever acknowledged your presence. And that is the ultimate shift. Leaving doesn't mean giving up, it means leveling up. Too often, walking away is misinterpreted as weakness, surrender, or failure. But the truth is, there is nothing more powerful than a person who chooses themselves over the comfort of being tolerated. When you leave, you are not quitting on love, you are quitting on the version of yourself that accepted less than you deserve. That's not defeat, that's evolution. That's you stepping into your higher self, the version of you that finally recognizes that love without respect isn't love at all. It takes courage to leave, not just because of the emotions involved, but because leaving means breaking the pattern. It means letting go of the story you told yourself about how things should be. You give up the fantasy in exchange for reality. And that reality can be cold, quiet, even lonely at first. But it's clean, it's yours. It's where healing begins. You're not abandoning anyone. You're rescuing yourself from the slow decay of emotional neglect. You are no longer asking someone to see your value. You are claiming it with your actions. Leveling up is about changing your standard. It's no longer begging for consistency or settling for crumbs of attention. It's knowing that your peace matters more than temporary affection. It's choosing alignment over attachment. And while people may say you gave up too easily, only you know how long you tried, how much you gave, and how much of yourself you lost in the process. Leaving doesn't erase your effort, it honors it, because instead of staying stuck hoping for change, you become the change. The moment you stop trying to convince someone to care, you create space for something better. Not just a better relationship, but a better you. You grow in the silence, you evolve in the separation, you start doing things for yourself. Not to make someone else notice, but because you notice. You begin to pour your energy into your own life, into your mind, into your future, into your healing, and that's the upgrade, that's the level up. You're no longer tied to proving your worth, you're living it. And here's what's ironic. The moment you stop trying to be enough for someone who never saw your worth, that's when they often start seeing it, because you're no longer standing in the shadow of their indecision. You're standing in your own light now, your energy shifts, your boundaries rise, your silence becomes sacred, and your life starts to reflect the power of that decision. So no, you didn't give up, you grew up. And the world around you will have no choice but to respond to the upgraded version of you. The one who doesn't chase, doesn't beg, and doesn't settle. The one who leaves not to escape, but to evolve. Emotional distance creates clarity. When you are deeply entangled in a connection, especially one that feels uncertain, inconsistent, or emotionally draining, it's hard to see things clearly. You're operating from a place of emotion, of hope, of attachment. You're clouded by memories, fantasies, and the potential of what could be instead of seeing what is. But when you take a step back, when you pull your energy inward instead of constantly giving it outward, something shifts. You begin to see the reality without the emotional fog, and that reality is what sets you free. Distance isn't about punishment. It's not about being cold or manipulative. It's about giving yourself room to breathe, to reflect, and to observe. When you're no longer reacting to every message, every silence, every shift in behavior, you reclaim control. You stop obsessing over what they think, what they feel, and whether or not they'll come back. You start paying attention to how you feel. You begin to realize how exhausted you were trying to hold something together that was never stable to begin with. You notice how much of yourself you were shrinking just to keep someone else comfortable. You recognize the imbalance, the emotional labor, the weight you carried alone. Distance brings all of that into focus, and it's not just you who gains clarity, he does too. When you're no longer filling the space, the silence gets loud. The lack of your emotional availability becomes noticeable. He has to sit with his own thoughts, his own patterns, his own consequences. He's no longer distracted by your presence or soothed by your emotional efforts. That absence forces introspection, whether he's ready for it or not. Suddenly, the things he brushed off, the calls, the effort, the care aren't so easy to ignore. They're missing, and that missing becomes uncomfortable. Clarity is a gift, but it's not always easy. It shows you the truth, not just about the other person, but about yourself. It reveals where you abandoned your own needs for the sake of connection. It shows you where you were begging instead of being. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the power of space. It wakes you up. It sobers you from the emotional high of false hope. It empowers you to choose differently, not out of spite, but out of awareness. When you create emotional distance, you stop waiting, you stop explaining, you stop fixing, and you start observing. You let the situation speak for itself, and in that observation, you find your answers. Sometimes it confirms that he cared but never knew how to show it. Other times it confirms he never cared as much as you hoped. Either way, you win, because clarity allows you to move forward with certainty instead of staying stuck in confusion. It allows you to close the chapter, or if it's real, write it on better terms. But either way, distance reveals the truth, and the truth is what finally sets you free. Focus on your growth and he'll feel the gap. When you shift your attention from him to yourself, from seeking to becoming, everything around you starts to transform. This isn't about ignoring your emotions or pretending you don't care. It's about redirecting the energy you once gave away into rebuilding the parts of you that were neglected. Growth isn't loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It moves silently, deeply, and powerfully. And the moment you commit to that process, the world around you, he included, starts to notice. When you focus on yourself, you stop reacting. You stop obsessing over unanswered messages, mixed signals, and emotional roller coasters. Your time becomes too valuable. Your peace becomes too sacred. You're no longer living in response to someone else's inconsistency. You're living by design. You're choosing to heal, to evolve, to rise. That kind of inner shift is impossible to fake, and impossible to ignore, because energy doesn't lie. People feel it when you change. They may not say it out loud, but they feel the gap. They feel the absence of the old version of you, the one who tolerated, overextended, and waited. He may not have noticed when you were constantly available, but he will notice when you're focused on your goals, your purpose, your happiness. He'll see it in your silence, in your posture, in the boundaries you now enforce. And it won't be your anger or distance that wakes him up. It will be the fact that you're unbothered, that you've moved on from needing validation from him to giving that validation to yourself. You're not trying to make a point. You are the point, and the most magnetic energy you can ever embody is the energy of a woman who's in love with her own life, the kind of woman who knows her worth and refuses to be reduced to a question mark in someone else's story. Growth looks good on you. It's in the way you dress, walk, speak, and choose. It's in how you no longer respond to breadcrumbs, how you protect your time, how you pour into your own passions. That's the kind of glow that makes people pause. That's the shift that creates impact. Eventually, he'll feel it. Maybe it'll hit him in a quiet moment when he's scrolling through his phone and sees your face. Maybe it'll hit him when he hears your name and realizes he no longer has access to your energy. Maybe it'll be when he sees that someone else appreciates what he took for granted. But he'll feel the space where you used to be, and that space will be filled with your growth, your strength, your evolution. Because when you rise, you force others to rise or fall away, and that's not your burden to carry. It's your power to hold. Growth doesn't chase, it attracts. So stop worrying if he notices. Focus on becoming so whole that whether he does or doesn't, it no longer defines you. Your departure is your declaration of worth. You may not say a single word, you may not slam the door or leave a note behind, but the act of walking away in silence, in strength, is one of the loudest statements you'll ever make. It tells the world, and more importantly, it tells you, that you are done proving yourself. You're done explaining your value. You're done holding space for someone who refuses to honor it. Walking away is not weakness. It is a bold, undeniable message. I choose me. There's a power that comes from making that decision. It's the moment you stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. It's not about punishing anyone. It's about refusing to stay where love feels like a transaction or a test. It's about reclaiming your voice, your standards, your dignity. And when you do that, when you walk, not with anger, not with desperation, but with peace, it changes everything. Suddenly, you're not the one hoping he'll come around. You're not the one keeping the door open. You've closed it, not out of spite, but because you finally understand that your worth isn't negotiable, and that shift doesn't go unnoticed. Energy speaks louder than words. The moment you leave, there's a gap, not just a physical space, but an emotional void, where once your light, your care, your consistency lived. Now there's silence. That absence speaks volumes. It says, I'm not afraid to be without you if being with you costs me myself. It says, I love deeply, but I love myself more. It becomes impossible to ignore, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because you've taken back everything you were freely giving away. You don't have to scream your worth to be heard. You just have to stop showing up where it's ignored. And once you leave, once you truly let go, you give the other person the only chance they ever had to see what you meant. You give them the mirror. They'll remember the loyalty, the kindness, the energy, and whether they act on it or not is irrelevant, because this time, your departure isn't about what they do next. It's about what you do now. You're stepping into a new chapter, one where your value is not up for debate. So let them feel the loss. Let them sit with the silence. You don't need to explain why you left. You already did. Every time you forgave too quickly, stayed too long, tried too hard, but now your absence is the answer. It says what words never could. I'm not available for anything less than I deserve, and that is a declaration that echoes far louder than your presence ever did. The moment you leave, he starts looking for you, not because you were invisible before, but because your constant presence was taken for granted. That's the painful truth. When you're always available, always forgiving, always waiting, your presence becomes expected rather than appreciated. But once you remove yourself, once you stop offering your time, energy, and emotional labor, the void you leave behind starts to speak, and that silence, that absence, it becomes the most powerful thing you've ever said. You didn't need to explain, beg, or scream. You just left, and in doing so, you awakened awareness in someone who was asleep to your value. This isn't about playing games. It's about waking up to your worth. Your departure is not a tactic. It's a transformation. You chose peace over pressure, clarity over confusion, and growth over stagnation. That decision sends a ripple through every part of your life, and yes, through him too. Because now, for the first time, he sees the truth. He sees what he had. He sees the light that used to warm his world, and it's gone. That's when people start to reflect, to regret, to reach. Not because you manipulated them, but because they were finally forced to see what they didn't cherish while they had it. In your absence, you're not just missed, you're remembered differently. The things you used to say are replayed. The things you did without asking are now recognized. All the little ways you loved that seemed ordinary at the time now feel extraordinary in your absence. And while he sits with that realization, you're not waiting for him to notice. You're building, you're rising, you're becoming, you're investing in yourself, not as an act of revenge, but as an act of rebirth. You've turned your energy inward, and now you shine not because you want to be seen, but because you've found your light again. True power comes not when someone needs you, but when you no longer need them to see your worth. That's what this whole journey is about. It's about letting go of the need for external validation and anchoring yourself in internal alignment. You are no longer trying to be enough for someone. You are enough, and you know it. That shift changes everything. It affects how you walk, how you talk, how you respond, and how you love. And ironically, it's in that shift that the world, and sometimes he finally begins to see you clearly. But by then, you're not looking back. You're too focused on the life that's unfolding in front of you. So if you've walked away, stay away, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for how far you've come. You're not the same person who once waited to be chosen. You've already chosen you, and in doing that, you've written a new story, one where your silence carries more power than your words ever did, one where your worth is no longer proven but known, and one where the moment you left wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything you truly deserved. Thank you for taking the time to receive this message. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you is shifting, and I want to honor that. I want to honor your courage, your strength, and your willingness to reclaim your power. This isn't just about someone missing you, it's about you finding you. That's the real victory. You don't owe anyone explanations for your growth, your silence, your distance, or your decisions. You only owe yourself the truth and the permission to walk in it unapologetically. You're not here to be half loved, half seen, or half heard. You're here to be whole, and the moment you leave what no longer honors that, the world begins to shift around your new standard. So, thank you for showing up for yourself, for listening, for reflecting, and for having the courage to let go of what no longer serves your highest self. This journey is not easy, but it's worth it. You are worth it, and everything ahead of you is brighter than anything you've had to walk away from. As you move forward, I hope you carry this truth with you. Your value doesn't decrease because someone else couldn't see it. It increases every time you do. Stay grounded, stay focused, keep evolving, and never, ever settle for less than the love you give. Until next time, take care of your heart, protect your energy, and always walk in your power. Thank you, and goodbye.